And hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and we are here at Spieth, and there is a lot to talk about on this day. As a matter of fact, you know, it's interesting because there were a couple of fascinating moments with Mr. Putin saying some things that he was adamant about, saying some things he was quite pleased about when it came to the economy, and also talking about some things he was actually quite angry about. We're going to talk about first Saudi Arabia. Mr. Putin came out and literally said that his friendship with Saudi Arabia as a country is endearing and something that's going to be lasting for a long time. Now, this is interesting. And the reason it's so fascinating is because they're on two separate sides of really this war between Israel, the United States, and Iran. I mean, there's no doubt, if you've been following the news, that Saudi Arabia is opposed to Iran in any way that we could possibly conjecture. While at the same time, Mr. Putin was essentially embracing Iran and saying that they're going to do everything possible to help Iran and continue their relations with Iran as they have in the past. So here you have Saudi Arabia in a situation where they're being quite critical of Iran. You have Russia that is not being critical of Iran, and yet you have Russia and Saudi Arabia all but embracing out here during this panel, which I thought was very fascinating. Mr. Putin also spoke toward the end about what's happening with this nuke strike in Zaporizhzhia, which is obviously something I mentioned in one of the things that he's obviously very upset about. He said, look, it is careless, and the reason it's careless is because if there's some form of contamination, we don't know which way the winds are going to blow. So it's he seemed to be alluding to the fact that it was all but stupid to do something like this, not to mention dangerous, because the contamination could go toward Ukraine or it could go toward Russia or maybe even reach some other countries. So it was something that he was very, very upset about. We're also going to play for you as we gather the information here, because I think this is one of the key moments as well, as Mr. Putin responded to Mr. Zelensky's request to apparently have a conversation with him. Apparently, Mr. Zelensky wants to come and have a conversation with Mr. Putin, and Mr. Putin is saying, I'm not interested in having a conversation. What I'm interested in is results. In other words, for Mr. Putin, it's not about two guys sitting around talking. It's about the people who do the legwork first creating some kind of solution, and then maybe he's willing to sit down with Mr. Zelensky and figure it out. He also seemed to allude to the fact that he's seen these kinds of things happen in the past where he was used. Minsk agreement, for example, where it was a meeting just to have a meeting, and in the end there was nothing that really came of it other than the fact that they were using it so that they can bolster the weaponry of Ukraine. That's the argument that Mr. Putin is making. So it's really been a fascinating conversation to hear all that Mr. Putin had to say. I want to start with this, though. You know, we are here at an economic forum, and Mr. Putin started his conversation talking about Russia's economy. And it's not just Russia's economy. I think to a certain extent, you have to understand that the Russian economy is tied to the BRICS economy. It's tied to the global South economy. So in many ways, when Mr. Putin talks about the things that Russia has been able to do, despite the fact that it's sanctioned, despite the fact that its assets have been frozen, really what he's saying is, look what the global South community has done. He talks specifically, and I'll give you the numbers because I think you're going to find this fascinating. He said that the global South is responsible for 4% of the world's GDP, but yet the G7 countries, hear me out here, the G7 countries are only responsible for 0.8% of the GDP. So what he's saying is, look at this, right? Global South, BRICS countries here, G7 countries here. It's a shift. Obviously, it used to be the opposite, right? He also said when it comes to GDP growth, the BRICS countries are leading the way with 4.5% annually, while the G7 countries are only doing about 1%. All things considered. So again, it's that disparity that he's talking about. We have Mr. Putin talking about this. I think it's illustrative. Let's take a listen. Here it is. Gene, play it for us.
If you look at the global GDP dynamics of the last 5 years, you will see that almost half of its annual growth, 49%, is accounted for by BRICS countries, whereas the contribution of the so-called Group of 7 is estimated at 18%. The share of BRICS in the world GDP based on purchasing power parity stands at 40%, whereas the G7 share is less than 29%. So BRICS has already overtaken the G7, and it did so back in 2020, but this gap is increasing.
You know what's fascinating about this is to hear him talk about lessons from the past. Mr. Putin has a tendency to almost sound sometimes like a school teacher talking about the experiences. And by the way, he talked a little bit about his age when he got that note apparently from Mr. Zelensky saying he wanted to meet with him because Mr. Zelensky's very critical of Mr. Putin and was threatening Mr. Putin, all but saying that Mr. Putin better watch out because he could be the next victim, I guess, alluding to some of the drone warfare that's been used recently by Ukraine. But the point that Mr. Putin was making is how important it is for Russia to have learned its lessons from the past. And I think in this case, what he was referring to was a question about sanctions and the freezing of Russian assets. And he basically said it was simply unfair to Russia. And they've learned their lesson because in the future, Russia, and this is the term he used, Russia will tend to do business only with neutral countries. That's an important word, neutral countries. In other words, if you look at the history of how the special operations began and how we've gotten into this now war with Ukraine, one of the points that the Russian diplomats, including both Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Putin, have always made is it's essential to be able to maintain Ukraine as a neutral country. In other words, the point that Mr. Putin was making was we don't necessarily want to hate Ukraine or be against Ukraine. What we'd like to do in this case is create a sense of neutrality with Ukraine. What we don't want, he said, is for Ukraine to turn around and be anti-Russia, which is what he and others say that NATO exactly tried to do when it came to Ukraine. So he made that point several times and referred to Russia being in a situation now where, because it's dealt with different countries and because it's created a relationship with China and because he's created a relationship with South Africa and India and other countries like Saudi Arabia, they now feel like they've been able to succeed economically. And at one point, he actually looked at the camera and said, they thought they were going to hurt us, but they're not, but they haven't been able to do so. So he was talking, when it comes to the economy, about building bridges with the new countries of the global south. For example, countries, like China, and some of the countries that border Russia, Uzbekistan, for example. He had three leaders with him here today, other than himself. He had the president of Uzbekistan, he had the president of Tanzania, and the vice president of China, all up on the stage with him. And you could tell that that was important for Mr. Putin to be able to do that. When it comes to Uzbekistan, part of the message that Mr. Putin wanted to make, and this is going to be somewhat shocking for people in the West who are very critical of Mr. Putin, or some of my friends in the United States who say he's a communist. He's not. There's not much left of communism in this country at this point. But a lot of people don't understand that he is pro-market. He is pro-free market. In fact, one of the points that Mr. Putin was making that was so important was how important it is in the case of Uzbekistan, for example, and this is a country with some 38 million people, by the way, how important it is to be able to create market conditions where people can start enterprises in Uzbekistan, small to medium-sized companies, for example. And And it seems strange because, you know, for us as Americans especially, here you have the president of Russia going on and on about capitalism and free market principles and how it works and establishing small businesses, for example. Here's Mr. Putin talking about that.
Speaking of e-commerce, we see about a 30% growth a year in this field. Our country is one of the global leaders in this area. This shows the quality of Russia's digital platforms that bring benefits to the Russian producers and foreign suppliers as well. Today, I mentioned our friends and partners from the Republic of Uzbekistan. I will give you an example. The volume of trade in Uzbekistani goods using the Walber's platform alone in 2023 amounted to $418 million. That was in 2023. In 2025, it amounted to almost $1.5 billion, potentially reaching more than $2 billion this year. What does this mean? The producers of various kinds of goods, including small and medium-sized enterprises and producers, use this platform to access the Russian market, and more than just the Russian market. They have access to other markets as well, and the volumes keep growing, and the people work more efficiently and make more money. Small and medium-sized enterprises are developing, and at the same time, this happens using modern logistics, modern systems of taxation and fee payment, and we can only welcome such solutions.
There's one other thing that I wanted to highlight talking about the economy, because he really seemed interested in impressing upon his audience, and he knows that he's got a Western audience when he speaks here, right? Because, again, it's an economic summit. He really wanted to impress upon them what he believes is the differentiator in its treatment of how it particularly has relations with countries abroad. Africa, for example. You know, Africa is very important for the Russians, very, very important, and as it has been for Mr. Putin. In fact, I talk to people here in Russia who are critical of Mr. Putin and say that, in fact, sometimes we need to be a little stronger and less forgiving when it comes to countries in Africa or anywhere else in the world. And Mr. Putin today here was actually making a point of the fact that no, it's about creating relations for the long term. So he kept talking about, for example, forgiveness of loans, which is something usually presidents don't talk about it because it's the money that they essentially are losing. And I guess you could argue it's bad business, but he talked about forgiving debts in Africa. And, you know, he may be onto something, because we learned as he was talking here that by 1850, 1 of 4 people in the world will be African. That's how large the continent is. That's how important it will become, and that may be why Russia pays so much attention to it, and has just finished signing what is memorandum of understanding, an MOU with Tanzania. The president of Tanzania was here, and she was talking at length about that and saying that it's extremely important. But obviously, when we talk about the economy, the most important part of the Russian economy when it comes to partnerships is China, without any question. And most people would argue that in many ways that has been created because the United States has literally, and the West, has pushed Russia into the arms of China. And China, of course, is now, that used to have real problems with Russia, by the way. Chinese officials have told me we used to hate the Russians. And we didn't like them after 1991 for sure, because we thought they sold out. So here is the Chinese vice president talking. And listen to what he says, because he's talking about equitable relationships. Equitable relationships. What he's really saying is we have an equitable relationship with Russia, but he's really being critical, backdoor critical, of the United States and the way it treats Russia and China. Take a listen.
Together, we are building an open, inclusive, fair, intelligent, cooperative, and mutually beneficial world. I would like to share 4 points. First, we must champion equality and cooperation and advocate for global community based on shared interests and joint consultation. In the face of unilateralism and protectionism, The international community needs to advance the core values and fundamental principles of multilateralism more than ever. We must champion genuine multilateralism and promote global cooperation among all countries. Equal participation, equal decision-making power, and equal benefits in governance. An unwavering commitment to promoting the democratization of international relations, expanding the representation and voice of developing countries.
So much of it was, especially at the outset, about the economy, and he's making some of the points that are, vintage Vladimir Putin. Cooperation, relationships with other countries, always including Africa, always being mindful of China, and saluting Saudi Arabia, which, as I said, is a very unique situation. Saudi Arabia is against Iran. Russia's kind of pulling for Iran, and here they too are, even though they disagree on the question of Iran, embracing each other in front of for the whole world to see. So it is kind of an interesting and different relationship, not the kind of stuff that we're usually used to in the West, and certainly not during this administration. Joining us now, as promised, Scott Ritter was good enough to join us. He's been here. You were listening to Mr. Putin's speech, were you?
Right there in the front row.
Were you really? Well, let me just ask you straight out then. What was your takeaway?
Well, the way it started, I was a little look, I'm a geopolitical military kind of guy, and this was purely an economic thing.
Of course.
But
an economic forum.
But as I listened to it, I was struck by what this means. In the West, we're all focused on the war. Everything's war-centric. Vladimir Putin's on economic growth, stability, the future. The war is there, and later on when he talked about it, clearly the war is a present. But he's not going to let the war define Russia. Right now, the war is defining Europe. The war is indirectly defining the United States. But Russia is not defined by this war. And that was a huge takeaway, because, to be honest, I was expecting something totally different. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason why I'm Scott Ritter and he's Vladimir Putin.
No, he's much more patient than you are.
He is 110% more patient.
He said at one point, almost forgiving, right? He said to a question, the military action will be over. I wrote it down. Military action will be over when our objectives and our goals are reached.
100%.
You're a military guy. What's that mean?
It means there's no calendar. It means, and you notice what he also told the guys. He direct appeal to him. You saw what he called him at the end, brothers.
Yeah.
The man is in solidarity with the military. They have a mission to do. He's not going to expound on it. They know what the job is, and they're going to get it done. And there's no pressure. He's not putting any pressure on them in terms of an artificial timeline. You have to do this by Victory Day. You have to do this by this day. They have objectives. The objectives are going to be met. And the same approach is taken with the economy. I mean, he just sat there. He said, we could gouge the energy, but you understand high energy prices are very bad for our long-term economic development.
Yeah.
He's focused on long-term economic development. It's one of the most mature political speeches I've heard in my entire life.
You know what's funny? You and I are Americans, and we're used to everything being in 4-year cycles. And I think
2-year cycles.
Or 2 year. Yeah, you're right. 2-year cycles, because they have midterms and congressional elections in our country. It seems like having that breathing space is better for a country in many ways. It allows them to have a plan and play it out. He's not in a hurry to do anything. Yeah. He's sitting down. You saw when he called up Solyanov and when he called in Mr. Sechin, and he asked them questions about what was going on with oil, and because he literally was trying to figure it out with them. And you know that these guys talk about this stuff all the time. There's an advantage to that, isn't there, Scott?
Well, the United States, we didn't always have this, election cycle-driven economy. There's a time when political parties would collaborate, especially on national defense,
right,
but even on economic development. They were looking out for the best interests of the country. And so we could get consistency over time. Today we have no consistency over time, and it's impossible to deal with. Vladimir Putin has been in power for 26 years, and Russia's benefited from it 100%.
Yes.
Because,
and if you stop right now and ask the people who are walking around here, what do you think? You might get one or two who are going to say, I don't like him, I don't like his leadership, but 80%, 8 out of 10, according to polls done by the Germans, will say, we like what he's done.
Even the people who are look, I have a lot of Russian friends, and oftentimes they say 26 years is too much.
Yeah.
We need fresh blood. We need this. We need that. I say, okay, but what are your criticisms? I don't have any specific criticisms. Just
I'm tired of seeing the same guy.
Yeah, you know, that's sort of, well, like, you know what? I'm not Russian, but I'm not tired of seeing this. I'm not tired of seeing St. Petersburg. Yeah. I'm not tired of seeing Russia. Yeah. I mean, because I know what Russia was back in the 1990s.
Oh, yes.
And I
mobs, murders, just inflation.
Not just that, but the total.
Horrible.
As a Russian historian, as somebody who appreciates the Russian people and Russian culture, Russia in the 1990s was a nation that fell out of love with itself, a nation that forgot to be Russian, a nation that abandoned Russia and started turning to the West, saying that's better than we are. Yeah. Today, you're not going to find too many Russians who are going, that's better than we are. They're going to say, we're pretty darn proud of who we are.
They turned to the West and said, help us, come here, show us how to do things. And essentially the West kicked them in the teeth and tried to steal them blind. Yeah. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's pretty much what happened.
Russia has 26 years of consistency. And this allows them, and what I hope is, look, Vladimir Putin, may he live a long and healthy life.
You respect him as a leader.
Well, who couldn't?
Yeah.
But, you know, he's...
Well, Americans don't because they have no idea who he is. They don't get to listen to this. They've never heard him.
Which means they don't, when you can't say they disrespect him, they disrespect the concept that's been sold to them by people who are anti-Russian.
Well said.
Because once somebody knows who Vladimir Putin is and what he's done...
Just like we're taught to hate Muslims. Like you have to hate Muslims.
Until you meet them. And then you're like, I love them.
Why do I hate Muslims?
I love people. I mean, that's the whole thing about people. But, you know... Russia someday, there will be a time in the future where there will be somebody who's the president of Russia who's not named Vladimir Putin. And I hope what Russia's learning right now is the wisdom of the methodology of the long game. That no matter who the president's going to be, because Russia does have election cycles, you know, don't fall victim to the American disease of immediacy.
Yes.
Stay true to what got you. Stay with the horse that got you here. And the horse that got you here is long-term thinking and consistent thinking over time.
Dance with the one that brung you.
Bingo.
How's that for Southern? Hey, listen, Florida's part of the South, and I grew up there. I want to play something for you. So something interesting happened just today, as a matter of fact. Mr. Zelensky has been very critical of Mr. Putin. He said Mr. Putin has to watch himself. It seemed like a threat. Seemed like he was saying the next drone is going to fall on your head, is what he seemed to be saying. At the same time, he's also calling for a meeting with Mr. Putin that was apparently arranged through a friend of Mr. Putin who came to him and said, I'm going to go to Kiev. Are you okay with that? Mr. Putin said, yeah, go ahead, go to Kiev. He goes, what if I talk to these people and I bring something back? He goes, well, you're not going to do it officially, but you're welcome to share with me whatever you have. So this person, who was unnamed, by the way, went to Kiev, had a conversation with Zelensky, and came back with a message. And Mr. Putin talked about all of this, talked about the message, talked about Mr. Zelensky, talked about the threat, talked about his age. And here it is. Gene, I think this is cut 4.
First, the author of this letter mentions my age. What can I tell? Well, everyone needs to think about their age. But I believe that at my age, many other political figures still keep performing their functions. Some of them are older than myself. We saw Donald, instructing, scolding the author of the letter. Now, as for the manners, as it were, on the whole, I would like to thank Donald for this work. It's useful, but there are other things that still need to be done. This has to be continued. Mr. Zelensky has asked for a meeting. I said, I never refused to meet. But meeting, just for the sake of meeting, well, I've seen that. There's a reference to the Minsk agreements, I think. The former leaders of France and Germany later state that it had been nothing but an empty shell of an agreement. All the Minsk agreements were about one thing, that is saving more time for the rearmament of Ukraine. Why would we need anything like this once again? What is this letter about? Is it a means to create an environment for a personal meeting, or maybe is this letter meant to make sure that no personal meetings can take place at all? I think it's the second. So we shouldn't be addressing the authors of this letter. The ones to be addressed are our combatants, our soldiers at the line of contact, and I'm addressing them. And I would like to tell them, comrade, soldiers, and seamen and sailors, admirals, generals, officers, the country's gazes are fixed upon you. The country is proud of you and places its hopes on you. Keep working, brothers.
So I'll take that as a no, that you're not going to meet the author of the letter.
Пока не вижу смысла.
So far, I see no point.
You know, it's funny. He didn't lay into Zelensky, as I would have, or most people would, when they're told a guy literally said he wants to kill you. He didn't do that, but he let it be known in no uncertain terms, it seemed to me, that Zelensky is diminutive, that he doesn't matter, that he has no interest in meeting with him, and then explained why he had no interest in meeting with him. What do you think of that response?
Well, first of all, notice that the authors of the letter, the authors, he's not saying Zelensky, he's saying Zelensky is a tool of somebody else, which is...
That's an interesting point. Good pickup. I didn't pick that up.
But you just heard him say it, the authors of the letter. Zelensky didn't write that letter. This letter was written by the Europeans. Zelensky is a tool of the Europeans.
Interesting.
This is the harshest reality. And so therefore, why would this letter? Notice what else Putin did at that time. And, you know, I'm not an expert on anything, really. I'm an observer.
I think you know a lot about military, and you obviously know a lot about nuclear weaponry. You're one of the smartest people in the world when it comes to that.
I've been studying this president for a long time.
Yeah.
And I listen, you know, because I don't speak fluent Russian. I barely speak Russian at all. But I listen.
Your English is even a little suspect sometimes.
Because it's American, maybe. but I do listen to tonality. I listen to tone. I listen to, you know, you can see the emotion.
Yeah.
This letter came at a time when 21 students were killed, murdered. Teenagers, he said, teenagers were murdered in their sleep in Starobelsk.
I was there.
And yes, you were. And he, you know, what he didn't mention, is that the day this forum opened up, 55 drones came in from the Baltics.
Yes.
Okay, 2 of which hit Kronstadt, leaving a pall of black smoke.
It was crazy, wasn't it? It was ominous to look at.
And so, you know, here's a man who says he wants to meet peace for what? We know why this letter was written. Yeah. This letter was written as a way of ensuring that Vladimir Putin would never embrace a peace talk, never embrace the concept of peace. Vladimir Putin, however, is supposed to behave like Scott Ritter. He's supposed to get foaming at the mouth, get angry, stand up, and start gesticulating.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to... Vladimir Putin instead behaved as Vladimir Putin. Yeah. He took everything in stride, but his tone was... I'm just
deliberate.
When I heard him go, when he shifted gears to Starobelsk, the tone changed. And then you heard the tone when he talked to the soldiers. It's a different tone. This is a man who wants peace, but he's committed to this war. And this war will not end until it's won on terms acceptable by Russia.
Yeah. You know, I got to tell you something. As a journalist, I've been so upset lately watching the coverage of this, Scott. I went there, and I talked to families. I talked to the school teachers. I talked to the administrator, the principal. I went into the village, which I wasn't supposed to do, but I did it anyway. You know how I am. And I talked to people, and I asked them, have you ever seen drones here? Have you ever seen the Russian military presence here? I really wanted to know. I mean, if there's a possibility that the Russians could not be telling the truth also. My job as a journalist is to go there and ask questions.
100%.
So I went there and asked questions, and I came away convinced that this really was a heartless attack on innocent civilians. I saw no evidence that it was nothing but that. And yet the next day I turn on CNN and I turn on the BBC, and they're either not showing the story or underplaying the story and saying Russia claims that a dormitory in a college was bombed by Ukraine. Russia claims? And they were invited to go on the trip to see it for themselves. What the hell does that tell you?
Well, first of all, we know that they're not journalists. I mean, Steve Rosenberg is an MI5 screened MI6 operative.
Yeah.
And if Steve Rosenberg wants to challenge me in a court of law, bring it on, baby. The discovery will be beautiful.
Yeah.
And if CNN wants to pretend that they're not an adjunct of the CIA, I will give firsthand testimony of how the CIA worked with the United Nations to fabricate stories. Look, neither one of them are journalistic outlets, so we need to stop treating them as journalistic outlets.
Just be fair.
They can't. They are propaganda tools. It's hilarious to have U.S. media and British media call me a Russian propagandist, call you a Russian propagandist, call RT a state propaganda. We're having a fair and freer conversation here right now than CNN or BBC will ever have. They can't have it because they're not journalistic outlets.
Yeah.
You're a journalist. I try to be one. I stayed at a Motel 6. But, but the point is, we do more journalism in an hour than CNN and BBC will do in a lifetime.
All day. Yeah. The other thing that seems to have him a little bit riled up, I sensed, and he doesn't usually show it, but he does get a little bit emotive, was this attack in Zaporizhia on the nuclear facility there. Yeah, that's some serious stuff. I mean, you start messing with that. I know it's closed down, but there's still enough. Here's the way it works. If somehow, well, you can explain this to us, if they still were to hit it and the external power stopped, there would be enough contamination to do serious damage in that area.
Look, it's a nuclear power plant. Even though the reactors have been powered down, there's still maintenance that has to happen. You need power to the facility. And what the Ukrainians are doing is cutting off the power, and you're creating the potential for an accident. But it's not just that. Russia is a nation of laws. That's one of the things that I've just appreciated over the years. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck because they're very bureaucratic.
Yes.
And, you have to have the exact,
by the book. Yeah.
Getting into this,
I know.
Was a bureaucratic procedure.
Everything.
So, but in a way that provides consistency over time. Again, they're not out for the quick outcome. They're out for the consistent outcome over time. But as a nation that believes in the rule of law, understand that it's illegal to strike a nuclear power plant. It is a violation of international law, what Ukraine is doing. And one of the points that the president of Russia made and others have made is, where is the voice of the West? Where is the West condemning this? Where's Grossi condemning this? Where's the IAEA condemning this?
Are you kidding? I saw a report on CNN the other day. I think you may have seen it. I played it, where they have a reporter, Scott, next to a specialized Ukrainian drone unit firing drones at civilian targets, and they're literally saying, here we are with this drone unit. They're trying to make Vladimir Putin crazy. My point is this, and I'm sure you'll agree, had that been Iranians or any other country, they would have said those people are terrorists.
But they are terrorists.
They are. They're acting in a terrorist way, aren't they?
People need to understand, too, the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, when they went into Kursk, when the Ukrainians in August of 2024 went into Kursk, with a NATO-planned and guided invasion, their goal was to capture the Kursk nuclear power plant. And they are nuclear terrorists. This is the dangerous thing. When you have peaceful nuclear energy, you have to respect the process. This is the same mindset that lets Israel bomb the Bushehr plant, which Vladimir Putin mentioned, and the United States tolerates it. You can't. The precedent set at Zaporizhia is repeated at Bushehr, and it can be repeated elsewhere. This is why it's essential, and this is why Vladimir Putin, he's not making a mountain out of a molehill. It's legal precedent. You cannot strike a nuclear power plant at all, zero tolerance. This is why he highlights it, and this is why it's important that it be highlighted, and this is why the West should be condemned for failing to highlight it.
I got a sense when he was talking about Donetsk and Luhansk that he was saying, and it wasn't too long after he had mentioned that the war will be over when we meet our mission and initiatives and we do what we set out to do. But I get a feeling, because he mentioned, well, we got 100% of Luhansk and 85% of Donetsk. And I got a sense that he was saying with that, we're very close. And this thing will be over at some point.
Except he's a master wordsmith.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned about Russians and Russian diplomats and Russian leaders is words matter. There are no loose words.
So what do you think he was trying to say?
He was trying to say the war will be over when it's over, and it's not going to be defined by Donetsk's territorial objectives. He said, and other things that we are doing.
Okay, but let me fill it out for him. Take 100% of Donetsk. Take the 15% that's left. You got it, right?
Yep.
Finish up in Zaporizhia, right?
Which you need 100% because it's Russia.
Right. Because
you need 100% of Kherson because it's Russia. Then you need the buffer zones that he talked about, and the buffer zones are defined by weapon ranges, which means Odessa will be under 100% of Russian control.
But let's suppose, and I think the moderator was trying to ask that. I think she did a good job asking good questions. Some were not so good, but let us suppose tomorrow Russia achieves Donetsk, what they want, 100% of Donetsk, and they get Kherson and they get Zaporizhia, or just enough of it, you know, where they're good. Do you think we could, at that point, let's suppose somehow, and the Europeans are never going to allow this, but let's suppose the guy I grew up with, Marco Rubio, is able to get in there and tell the Zelensky, look, this is it. This is the best deal you're ever going to get. It's over. Let's end this thing. Do you think that would make that would appease Mr. Putin to cut this deal?
I don't think Mr. Putin can be appeased.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. On Victory Day, I was at the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I've done Victory Days 3 years prior to that. This was a different Victory Day. This was a Victory Day that was a whole different vibe. And one of the themes that played out over and over again was unconditional surrender. They focused on this. And, you know, when an ambassador gives a speech, he doesn't write it off the cuff. It's, you know, it is vetted. It's part of the national messaging. And the messaging coming out is that this war won't end with anything other than the unconditional surrender of Ukraine. I think, to be frank, you know, Vladimir Putin is...
So it's not about territory, is what you're saying?
It's about winning the war. He said all objectives have to be met. Denazification. He highlighted it today. He said people go, oh, that's impossible. It's not impossible, and it's necessary when you rebury Andrei Melnik, the mass murder of Jews and Poles and everything, and you rebury him.
What a terrible signal that sent.
Well, what that means is denazification is necessary. So the war doesn't end until you get denazification. This is a reality. This means the regime of those who wrote the letter must be ended.
But let me take the Western perspective now.
But why?
No, I know, because I'm trying to be a journalist and I'm trying to be fair.
I'm joking.
People are watching all over the world. You know and I know there are people in this room right now, and there are people here in Russia who are starting to get impatient, especially a lot of the business community. They're just tired of the war. They want to start having better relations with the West. They want the sanctions pulled. And you get a sense, or you get a feel that these people talk to him. He's got a lot of friends in that community. They got to be getting to him. He's got to be, in the back of his mind, he's got to be saying, boy, I got to find a way to put this thing to bed. Huh?
But when has he ever compromised on a fundamental issue? Find me. See, I believe in precedent. I can look at American politicians and say they are capable of the kind of compromises you're talking about.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin has never compromised on fundamental issues.
Yeah.
And on the issue of this war. And remember, I listened to tone. When he shifted the conversation and he addressed the soldiers directly, the tone changed. The tonality changed, which means the messaging changed. And when he said brat at the end, brothers.
Yeah.
That means he will never betray them.
Right.
And to compromise, to sit there and say, die, go forth, sacrifice your life, but I'm going to give it away because Schmuckatelli here wants a business deal with the West. That will never fly.
Mr. Schmuckatel to you, by the way.
That's right.
I've got some pictures I want to share with you now. I'm being told in Moscow that we've got some pictures coming in. Mr. Putin, after this meeting, went and met with we got video? No. What we're told, hold on, I'm getting this. He met with Chinese officials. So he's been meeting with Chinese officials. Yeah. I don't know. At some point we may have the pictures, we may not. It doesn't matter. The point is he made a point of showing his friendship with the Saudi Arabians, despite the fact that they're on different sides of this war. And he's making a huge point every time he gets an opportunity to talk about Africa. And, of course, the real love affair seems to be between Russia and China. What do you make of those?
Well, let's set it up. You know, there were several participants in this panel. You had the president of Tanzania.
Yep.
You had the Uzbek president,
Correct.
you know, in China, the vice president.
Yeah.
He made a shorter speech than anybody else, and he had one question, and then he sat there patiently throughout the entire meeting. This was done deliberately, because the Russians are experts at protocol. Experts at protocol.
What do you mean? What was done deliberately?
To give him less time.
Interesting.
This is the vice president of China, and he got the least amount of time
compared to the representative from the African continent
who got
and
a
the other
ton
one
of
from
time.
Central Asia.
And Uzbekistan had a longer speech. Speeches are defined. You know this when you up the speech, you give it a certain amount of time. That speech was pre-written and it's sort of scripted. So this was done deliberately because the Chinese-Russian relationship isn't going to be defined on the stage in St. Petersburg. It was defined, as Ushakov, the advisor of President Putin, said, in Beijing, the spirit of Beijing.
Yeah.
And so what's happening now is, President Putin going on and getting on with the business of state, which is to seal the deal. And, here's the other interesting thing. First of all, Saudi Arabia and Iran, you say they're enemies, but, they actually have rapprochement and they exchange diplomatic relations. And who brokered that? China.
Yeah.
So I think it's essential that you have Saudi, and I think it was a perfect move by President Putin to have this, to give recognition to the Saudis, to have them stand up and speak.
Yeah.
But now, talking with the Chinese, this is a master of the game here, President Putin, a master of the game. He's playing the game. Now we come back to what we talked about: 2-year cycles, 4-year cycles.
Yeah.
Why can't we ever fix the levees down in Louisiana? Because whoever gets the money wants his name on it.
Yeah.
But if a levee takes 30 years to make, his name won't be on it, and he doesn't want to give credit to somebody else. Here you have a Russian president who is just focused on getting the job done.
There was an overture or a sense of, and you always get this, if you guys watching us from the West ever have an opportunity to come to Russia, one of the first things that you'll recognize is you will be so appreciated here. You will hear the songs you like when you walk in the malls. You will have people come up to you when you tell them, if, for example, you're American. Oh, my God, you're American. Let's speak English. They get there's a real embracing of the West, especially of the United States of America, for some reason, despite the fact that we have kicked them in the teeth.
Even today.
Yeah, even today.
Yeah,
and we saw it today. I mean, the fact that the United States sent this representative, to be fair, he's a minor player, and this is not a big player in the Trump administration. But it was nice. It was an overture. Here's a guy who has the blessing of the President of the United States to come to speak. This is something that hasn't happened in more than a decade here. So I guess it's an overture. It's important. And they kind of made a big deal around here about it, as usual. What does that tell you?
And the curious thing is, this is just my perspective, Trump doesn't deserve to be treated well. I mean, the Trump administration's, let's just skip it down to basics.
Yeah.
The policy of the strategic defeat of Russia that was put in place by the Biden administration. If you remember Lloyd Austin coming back and saying our goal is the strategic defeat, which means, just so people understand, total economic collapse, political collapse, military defeat, and the breakup of the of Russia, similar to the Soviet Union. It's not a slap on the wrist. It's not a timeout. They're talking about the destruction, the political destruction of Russia. That's what it means.
That's true.
That policy has not changed. The CIA is still implementing that policy today. The CIA station chief in Moscow is implementing that policy. The decisions he makes about what is being done in Russia, the support being provided to Ukraine, is all linked to that policy. Yeah. Scott Bessent is operating on that policy. All this stuff about Russian oil, sanctioning Russian oil, Rosneft, Gazprom, it's all designed to collapse the Russian economy. Marco Rubio is still implementing policies designed to implement. So Donald Trump deserves nothing. He lied to the Russians in Anchorage. This is why the spirit of Anchorage, he deserves nothing. The difference is that at least he's talking to the Russians, whereas Biden didn't. Yeah. And so, again, now we come back to the maturity of Vladimir Putin, who says, we'll take what we can get at this juncture.
Yeah, thank you for sending this guy, even though he's not important. Yeah, it's nice he's here.
But not only that, he treated Trump with kid gloves this entire time. He spoke respectfully of him. He was complimentary of him. Things that, again, this is why I would never be the president of anything, because I would have just ripped into him. But Vladimir Putin plays the long game. He's not out for 2-year political gotchas and 4-year political domination. He says in the long term, we have to have good relations with the United States. We have a president who, for whatever, all of his imperfections, is talking to us. They sent somebody here. We are going to continue to provide the opportunity for this path to succeed. If the door is shut, we're not shutting the door.
There's something about you, Scott, that I've noticed just in our friendship. And I think the world of you. I think you're a serious man, and I think you have serious objectives. You have a real tendency, you're like what we call a dog with a bone, to make sure that the relationship between the United States and Russia improves. What drives you to have that as almost your core mission in life? It's so important to you.
Look,
I see it.
When I was in the Marines, I joined the Marines to kill Russians. And it's not a joke.
Yeah, no, I get it. Listen, I'm Cuban. I was taught to hate them too.
Yeah, but I lived in West Germany in the 70s when the First Guards Tank Army was right across the border, 20th Combined Arms Army. They were come in 6 hours, they'd be at my home.
Yeah.
If the war started, we were going to die, my family. And I said, that is unacceptable. I'm going to join. I joined right out of high school, and I joined the Marine Corps. Sole goal of killing Russians. That's it. Then I went to the Soviet Union in 1988 as a weapons inspector. And it just totally flipped the script because I, for the first time, met the Russian people as people. And I literally left that job. First of all, we got rid of nuclear weapons, which was going to destroy all of Europe and the world. It was a grand mission, and we worked together. And I fell in love with Russia. Not starry-eyed love, but I just said, these are human beings.
Good people.
Just like we are.
Yeah.
And so my objective has always been to get us back to that point. It's very hard, as you know, and I paid a big price.
Yeah.
But now you say what drives me. I'll give you I'll be honest. Last year, not that I gave up, but I was just tired of the hassle. The American people just aren't ready, and I'm tired of even though I'm a Marine, I'm beating my head against a brick wall.
Yeah, I know.
So my daughter had a baby, little Marceline Salome.
Congratulations.
The miracle baby. I'm a granddad.
Nice.
April 26th.
Me too, by the way.
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm also a grandpa.
We're old.
Yeah.
But, and this was a difficult baby. I can say it now. She was born with a very serious heart defect.
Wow.
And she had to undergo 8 hours of surgery, and she coded twice, and she shouldn't be alive today. And today she's a miracle baby. Literally a miracle baby. Everything's good. And I looked at her, and and what can I offer her? I said, you know what I can offer her? I can offer her a world where she can grow up in peace.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to get back on the horse, get back in the saddle, get back to Russia, and start doing this all over again.
Especially with two nuclear superpowers.
Because when I came here in November, I was crushed because the Russians had given up on arms control because America wasn't a worthy arms control partner. And then the last arms control treaty, New START, expired in February, and I just was about to throw up my hands up and say, I'm done with this. Pontius Pilate, go do what you need to do, man. With her, I received an email, and I can say it publicly now. Abdi Aladinov, who is a friend of mine, Russian Lieutenant General, Chechen. Mm-hmm. He sent me congratulations. He said, congratulations on the birth of your granddaughter. He said, and I hope that she and my grandsons can grow up in peace. And so I wrote something to my kids. I said, look, my job right now is to make sure that Abdi Aladinov's grandson in 18 years can come calling at the door for little Marceline Salome. What happens after that is your problem.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure that you have that problem.
No.
So that a Chechen from Russia can meet a girl born in America as friends. It's
about creating a safer world.
That's what drives me today, to be honest.
And
I am going to make a safer world for Marceline Salome.
It's an honorable mission. I'll say one final note, and we'll end on this only because I see our friend George Galloway down there, and I'm looking at George down there, and I'm thinking about something as I look at him. And you know how I am.
Well, you want to rip your eyes out because he's ugly son of a gun.
Well, we love George.
I do.
Think about this for a moment. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about this when I looked at George. Here's a guy who all but has been kicked out of his own country. Yeah. The UK today resembles the Soviet Union, and Russia resembles what the UK and America used to be. That's weird.
What's interesting,
I mean, you can't go into the UK without them looking at your phone to seeing what message you have made, and they literally will take you away and put you in jail for saying the wrong thing. But not here.
If you talk to old KGB hands, they'll say, back then, if you said something we disagreed with, at worst we would talk to you. You have to cross the line for us to grab you.
Even the KGB.
But here, so the KGB's like, y'all gone crazy, man. And, and we're all like, the KGB was really evil and bad and all that.
When the KGB says,
but when the KGB's like, you guys have gone over the line.
Yeah.
But that's the truth.
Yeah.
And even in the United States, we have to fight for these freedoms, because the moment you let up,
privacy,
the government will always jump in and take it. You can give them nothing. England doesn't have a constitution.
It's horrible.
So look what happens.
Cenk Uygur was just banned.
So look what happens when you don't have freedom of speech. In America, we have freedom of speech, but we have to fight for it, because the second we let up, the government will come in, and we will become Great Britain.
Yeah. We kind of see it happening. Well, thanks for getting up here. Man, you came fast, too.
Well, I heard Rick's waiting. I'm like, I can't leave Rick waiting.
I thought I was going to hear you coming up the stairs or something. Here comes Scott. Boom, 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 boom. That was fantastic.
It's a great set you guys have.
No, we've had a wonderful week. We had Candace Owens on here. I had Maria Zaharova on. Great conversation.
Who came up with the death mask concept?
Oh, I don't know. You know what?
Because there's just some funny stuff downstairs. The trash bin is sanctions. I mean, the 20th.
This place is amazing. It's very artsy-fartsy for me, but it's been a fascinating SPIEF. It's actually been a very good economic conference. I tell people this is nothing like Davos. There are billionaires and millionaires here, too. But there's more of a sense of a working man's Davos. Like, they care more about helping the people of the countries, because they're all countries from BRICS and the global south, than they are just billionaires who want to go skiing in their private jets.
This isn't just a billionaire party. Fact is,
it's not a billionaire.
I don't even think it is a billionaires party. It's the billionaires are sort of like in the periphery of this.
They're here too, and there's bad people and greedy people everywhere in the
Russian
world.
Media is this is a celebration of Russia. The SPIEF is a celebration of Russia. It's not just a money thing. This is Russia celebrating Russia. You walk around here and you see things that Russia is proud about.
Yes.
And now it is Russia putting their best foot forward. We know that.
Exactly.
But who wouldn't?
Right.
And it's not a bad foot to put forward.
Yeah, exactly. We all do the same thing.
Yeah.
I put on my best suit from time to time just to try and look good, so people don't see me in my dungarees, as they say. You look great. You look great.
I got a new jacket, man. I bought it just for SPIEF.
Thanks again, Scott. It's always such a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.